Welcome to the Frontline Fortitude webinar series sponsored by the California Police Athletic Federation. In this series, we're going to unite in strength and resilience against life's challenges. We aim to highlight that you are not alone on this journey. Our webinar series aims to provide valuable insights and unwavering support for the brave men and women that serve in first responder community. This is the first in a series of quarterly webinars highlighting the connections between physical fitness, training for competition, camaraderie, and an overall wellness lifestyle. First responders face stressful situations daily in the line of duty. The California Police Athletic Federation offers this series, Frontline Fortitude, to educate and inform our athletes on the health benefits of competing in events such as the World Police Fire Games, the United States Police and Fire Championships, and the First Responder Relay Race. The webinar series will equip our athletes with tools and knowledge to manage the workplace stresses that they will inevitably encounter. Each episode explores critical topics that matter to you, the athlete, which helps you understand and effectively respond to daily stresses of the job. Peer support strategies that foster connection and camaraderie among our colleagues, and the transformative power of physical fitness in cultivating mental and emotional resilience. We will offer practical solutions and expert advice to empower you to take control of your well-being, ensure you are equipped to face the challenges of our profession, and we are committed to support you in every step of the way. Visit www.cpaf.org for a wealth of resources tailored to your needs. So this is the first, as I mentioned, the first webinar for the series called Frontline Fortitude. This quarterly webinar series will also work hand in hand with the on-site Frontline Fortitude presentations that will be offered at both the World Police Fire Games and the United States Police and Fire Championships. I am Buck Best. I'm a director with both the World Police Fire Games and the United States Police and Fire Championships. And I'm here today with Jake Patten. Jake is the fitness I'm sorry, let me get to your exact title here. He is the Strength and Conditioning Coordinator for Fairfax County Fire and Rescue. So in full disclosure, Jake and I have worked together in the past. I am retired from Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department, and we worked together a few years back when I was the captain in our behavioral health section. And Jake and the other colleagues that he worked with at the time in the WellFit Center identified that there were firefighters who were struggling with rehab from injuries or with their overall physical fitness and benefited from the services of behavioral health as well as the strength and conditioning. So that's how Jake and I first came to know each other. Jake has been the strength and conditioning coordinator in Fairfax for 8 years. He has helped to oversee the wellness and fitness of the Fairfax County Police Department since 2022. So he's working now with both firefighters and police officers in the WellFit Center where he works. Jake played collegiate football as a strong safety with special teams at Virginia Tech University, after which he went undrafted to the professional ranks of football with the San Francisco 49ers. And his family is also well established in professional football. So he, like many of the people that participate in our games, he has also been a collegiate and a professional athlete. He has, I'll let him talk about the certifications that he has if he cares to mention it, but he has a whole list of certifications for the work that he does. One of the terms you'll hear him talk about is the tactical athlete. And sometimes you'll hear in some circles the term used industrial athlete to refer to firefighters and police officers. but he also helped develop what they use in Fairfax, a functional movement assessment, to assess the fitness of the firefighters and to help them customize strength and conditioning programs for the functional movements of the job that they do. He's highly skilled in Olympic weightlifting and injury reduction techniques, supervising recruit fitness, orientation and education, recruit physical fitness programming, injury risk assessments, peer fitness coach programs, and collaborate with the WellFit's physical therapist to provide work conditioning. So many aspects of what he does is around what I like to refer to as a holistic wellness of the people in the service. So Jake, welcome today. Thank you very much for participating in this webinar of ours. I'm hoping that we'll be able to provide a lot of tools for our athletes that choose to tune in. So let's start off with, how about if you tell us a little bit about how you came from professional football and collegiate athlete to strength and conditioning for the fire service?
Yeah, sure. First of all, again, thank you for having me, Buck. It's pretty exciting to kind of share the story and just also talk shop about, this thing that we do in a sense. So my background, grew up in an NFL locker room through the good graces of my father playing for a long time. And then kind of just always loved playing sports. Obviously wanted to fill his shoes with football and was blessed to in the collegiate arena. And then blessed once again to get a chance to, try my skill set at the highest level possible, which I did for a short stint and then got cut and released. But I got to say the couple games that I played in, the months and weeks that it took to train and kind of prepare myself mentally was some of the best experiences of life that I think I had, at least up until that point, not just with sports, but just in terms of who I was as a human, let alone as an athlete, and what would end up being a coaching career that came out of it. So once I was done, I was released from the 49ers. I got into collegiate strength and conditioning. Always loved it when I played as the athlete, and who I considered to be a good mentor and kind of role model was my strength coach at Virginia Tech, who also pretty much helped me to get on the field in a lot of ways. I had the skill set, the X's and O's, I understood the game, but I needed just a little bit more of an edge with my agility and my strength and my capabilities to play. And so staying in touch with him and getting into coaching. Shortly after getting released from the NFL, I went to Duke University, spent 2 years, got my certifications needed to kind of start my career in a sense as a full-time coach with the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Association. And then basically try to get away from football as much as I could for at least the first portion of my career. I wanted to try to learn as much as I could and immerse myself in as much as I could in basketball, field hockey, wrestling, the Olympic side of sports. So that way it gave me kind of a well-rounded resume and picture as to, how I wanted to train athletes, how I wanted to help coach and teach them. Because, you're dealing with a lot of 18 to 23-year-olds in that endeavor. So basically, you're trying to help shape young men and women, not just as athletes, but as people. So having a good kind of resume was kind of my thinking process in terms of my well-rounded capabilities. So went to Duke, and then I landed at American University in DC, working with, it's a small Division I school, but an awesome program. I owe a lot of my experiences to that program based off of the size of staff that we had, which was me and one assistant for 9 teams. And we had a very small shared facility with the general population of students. So long story short, to bounce from a Virginia Tech program to an NFL program to Duke University to American, it was shocking in a sense, especially dealing with a budget and hiring and stuff like that. And I then took that skill set and went back to football after a few years at American and ended my sport coaching career at James Madison University as the associate program director for strength and conditioning on the football side, overseeing a few other sports. And then I'll be honest with you, I loved coaching. I loved my athletes. I loved the game day atmosphere, but I kind of got burned out a little bit with working 60 to 80 hours a week, not having much of a family life at all. It's pretty hard on the sports side of things. So I I had also met my now wife at that point. So I decided that was the time to kind of move on. And I put applications out to join either law enforcement or fire service wherever I could, pretty much in the DMV area, DC, Washington, DC, Virginia, Maryland. So I sent out as many applications as I could, had a couple hits, went through all the processes that I could. And then fast forward, I was literally running on a treadmill doing a stress test for Fairfax County when Doc Stewart, who is still our occupational health director, was kind of like, hey, what's your background? It might take a year or two before you get hired or get on the job, but we do have this position open. And I think you said something about playing sports and being a coach. We actually have a strength conditioning coach position available. Why don't you apply? And it'd be kind of a good, bookmark for you to at least get your foot in the door. You get to coach and do what you love to do. But at the same time, inevitably you could be waiting for a career to start in the next year or so from this department. I'm like, I'd be dumb not to, Of course, it wasn't that simple at the time. I had, had to sit down, talk to my now wife, and kind of go through some things. And I decided this was the right path that I was being directed towards. And what better opportunity to not only just be a part of a fire department, but also to help those firefighters and help utilize a skill set that I had spent 8 years cultivating, and 8 years plus really from playing to coaching, but to then express that and help share that with some of my tactical athletes. And that landed me in the Fairfax County role, and I've been there ever since. And it's been super fun and challenging. And I got to say, I am biased a little bit, but having seen both sides of the spectrum, the sports and the tactical side, this has been the best 8 years of my coaching career that I could have ever asked for. It's pushed me in a fun and challenging way to better my skill set in different aspects and in different ways, almost every damn day of the week. As you know, Buck, being a firefighter, you have different personalities, you have different calls, you have different needs and asks from management leadership to also boots on the ground. It's just been a really fun experience so far.
So how do, from what you just said, in your experience, how do the tactical athletes differ from the other athletes that you coached before? How does that play out differently for you?
Yeah, that's one of my kind of the most fun I have in terms of talking about what it is that I do. I usually get to bring that up, or it gets brought up to me and I get to talk about it, but there's not a lot of differences when it comes to the X's and O's of strength and conditioning, whether it's lacrosse compared to football or football compared to firefighting. We're going to train people, and I say train, but I can get confusing sometimes with the job training, but working people out and training them to be more educated about their body and what they can do with it in terms of, reducing the risk of injury, resiliency, holistic approaches, everything that we can use marketability wise with those terms. But really what that means is teaching them about themselves. It doesn't have to be someone that was former, special forces in the military or Division I athlete to be a better version of themselves in the fire service. It really is just let's meet them at their level, figure out what makes them tick a little bit. What are your likes? What are your hobbies? What about the job do you love? What's your specialty? And then we kind of nitpick that a little bit and formulate a plan that I know will keep our people motivated, challenged, but also, progressing with it. And then we get to assess along the way. It's no different than our sport athletes, right? With football, I have kind of a specific goal in mind. I know exactly when their seasons are, in season, out of season, postseason play to, you had overtime and so there's a lot more of a, specific layout for those things. But in essence, you're training the same concept. They want to be able to perform better. They want to last in their career and their job as long as they can, or as long as they'd like to. And at the same time, like they want to feel good, they want to be happy. They might not walk around and say, hey, Jake, how can you make me happy today? But at the end of the day, it's blasting some good music while they're picking up something or walking on the treadmill, or sometimes they just come into our shop and sit down and talk, and we just listen, and we get to use our peer support side to help with that as well. I had the same thing on the collegiate side. I can't tell you how many athletes came in and talked to me about stressors like schoolwork, meetings and film, dealing with certain personalities on the team, let alone coaches. I mean, the similarities were almost uncanny when I first started working in this role, so there's very, very similar, paths on each side. And I'd almost argue that the tactical side, police, fire, and military, of course, is what I'm talking about. But the length of career potential, when you're talking about, the majority of people want to get 20 years plus in this job. And take some of the financial benefit stuff out of it. Not that that's not important, but what I'm talking about more is they love the brotherhood, the sisterhood. They love the job of helping their community. And so they're going to try to extend that for as long as they can. And having that self-worth within that job is definitely something that pushes people almost more so than the finances. And not to say that the sports side doesn't have that same concept. People obviously love the game. They want to last as long as they can doing the thing that they love. Unfortunately, playing sports can be a lot more political at times and a lot more cutthroat at times, and you're less than maybe 3 to 4 years at times, maybe 10 years if you're lucky. So I would say that the tactical side, those athletes have a lot more on their plate that they have to figure out along the way. And it's really cool to bring our shop into that mix to help them extend their potential.
Yeah. So before you came to take the test in Fairfax for a firefighter, what was your exposure to the first responder community? Were there people in your family? Was it on a lark? I mean, my story is that I was a newspaper photographer and I got tired of watching people do heroic things and I wanted to get involved. And so I joined the fire department. So I
Sure.
left behind a career that I had trained for, and you kind of shifted your career path towards the first responder community as well.
Yeah. Well, first off, I don't have anybody in my family on either side that are police or fire, to be honest with you. My father wanted to get into it after playing football in his double-digit career, but he was a lot more beat up and broken, and he kind of realized, hey, the writing's on the wall. I'm good physically. I don't think I can do. I want to do it, but I can't. Whereas I kind of had always heard that, and no matter what my dad said or did, again, it was a kind of a heroic stance for me to hear him say it or do it. And so to me, it's like, football, awesome, check. Firefighting, I'm into it. The thing I was kind of not battling, but figuring out along the way is once I graduated and I was done with football, was okay. I got a degree in sociology. I always kind of thought I'd actually go back into the mindset of a military route. My whole family, well, I shouldn't say the whole, but the majority of my family pretty prestigious Army careers, from my dad's two brothers to multiple grandfathers, and a couple cousins, including one that's still currently active duty. And so I kind of thought I would go that route. So I knew at that time the tactical realm was where I kind of wanted to go, but I didn't know what that looked like, and which specific, avenue I was going to go down. But in terms of seeing it, experiencing it, I pretty much saw a lot of it, especially in a lot of these, college programs, from security with police and getting to know the Harrisonburg Police Department and their staff when at JMU football games, to some of the medical staff I got to get in touch with when going over protocols, procedures with athletes on the EMS and fire side. And of course, throughout high school, middle school, getting to interact with, show and tell days and parents coming in that were firefighters. Or I always thought it was such a badass thing. You see these men and women put on their bunker gear, their helmets, or you have the police officers with their plate carriers, their belts, and just enforcing good and justice and stuff. I mean, it was just such a cool comedic, comic approach to where like you're looking at like a Marvel superhero. This is really fascinating to me. And then I got to add in, my coaching background and say, wow, there's this whole avenue of where we get to help the heroes that are helping our community. And as one of my good colleagues and who I kind of consider a mentor on the fire side of things, and John Hoffman, a pretty prestigious Southern California strength coach down there, he always said it, like, we're supposed to be, from a program standpoint, but also a coaching standpoint, we're your all's 911. We're the dispatch that gets to get your call and say, hey, what's going on? How can we help? And it's really cool to kind of build the foundation of a program where we're that safety net. We get to kind of hopefully get involved, and it doesn't have to be a whole lot. It's just one little thing, whether it's a conversation, or I get to show you how to move that weight a little differently, or we get to work on a diet plan, or what have you. That one little thing could potentially help this hero. Like, I'm all in. Like, to me, that was one of the coolest sounding things ever, outside of trying to actually be one. That was the next best thing, if not better, in my opinion, with where I am currently.
Yeah. So now that you are in that community, you've been in that community for a while, what has surprised you about that community in terms of their relationship with physical fitness, and some of the tools that you've been able to give them to build resilience?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably take this even back to one of the previous questions with sport athletes. It's amazing how, and I don't know if it's part of just our human condition and our human nature, but even with sport athletes, I could have, a football player that was built like a brick house, ran faster than anybody else, was super skilled, but hated to work out, hated the weight room, hated conditioning or what have you. And it was more or less my job to kind of help just figure out why. And then, like I said, just, educate them. Like, well, here's how I can help you reduce the risk of injury. I remember you tore something 2 years ago. I don't want that to happen again, let alone maybe on the other side of the body, maybe not your right shoulder, but your left shoulder and what have you, and try to find new ways to maybe get across to them how important strength and conditioning can be. And a lot of what I think people misconstrue is our job is not just to push, motivate, yell, pick up heavier weights, all that stuff. A lot of it is actually we got to figure out good and strategic ways to pull people back. Our job as strength coaches is to motivate and improve performance, but really it's when do we step in as professionals and say that's too much. They need recovery, right? Like we're always kind of throwing out that term, oh, we can't train too much or overtraining. And in a lot of ways, I know there's two sides of this conversation, but there is no such thing as overtraining. It's you're under recovering or not recovering at all. And that includes sleep, and that includes nutrition, that includes finding happiness and not, or even finding a de-stressor, not letting yourself come back down from all the stresses you deal with on the job. And so when dealing with firefighters specifically, that is one of the biggest challenges is, with our department, we have over 1,400 personnel. And then if you factor in police as well and helping them to oversee what they have going on that's similar to us on that side of the aisle, you're talking about over 3,000 personnel that are going to have potentially 3,000 different takes on one call or one opinion or emotion, and you got to find new ways and constantly reinvent how it is you're going to formulate that conversation with them to get it across to them like we're here to help. And I get it if you're like, hey, listen, man, I just don't want to deal with you today. I don't, not that I'm anti-fitness. I kind of don't want to see you. Cool. I get that. No worries. Here's my card and my information. If you need to hit me up or where I am at, just hit me up whenever you need me. Or if I need to come out to the firehouse, let's have at it, And so for me personally, talking about the growth earlier, like as a coach, I really had to, almost, I don't want to make it sound like it's, cooler than it is and, puff my chest, but as a strength coach on the sports side, we are a lot more of a drill instructor at times, especially in the beginning phases of, training camp to the off season and again, reshaping or shaping these young men and women. We get to do that a little bit with recruit schools and the cadets and recruits and the different academies. But at the end of the day, dealing with, grown adults that are putting their lives on the line every day and dealing with home life issues and jobs, promotions, deaths and stuff like that. It's literally just trying to be human again and just, hey, I'm a coach, but I'm here with these today. I'm here just trying to figure out, again, how can I help you? And if I can't, is there someone I can get you in touch with, whether it's our dietitian, our rehab specialist, maybe it's just my captain, my colleague of mine who's your peer, because I'm not a firefighter. I've done ride-alongs. I've immersed myself in this culture. I've shaved my face and done, a bunch of different training, air management stuff, but I'm not a firefighter. What if I got you in touch with him who's seen a lot of the same things or has dealt with a lot of the same things as you have? So it's been really unique, fascinating, and really kind of selfishly, I geek out over that stuff because it's kind of, it helps me personally as well. Like, okay, I know I helped that person this way. I talked to that person that way. Maybe I need to look in the mirror sometimes to figure out how am I going to compartmentalize it today on my own. Like I just heard some interesting stories about a call this guy ran. How am I going to handle it so when I go home, I don't have to have my family hear too much about it, right? So
Yeah.
it's really fun in that regard.
So one of the other programs, one of the programs that I ran in behavioral health was an art program, and the connection that I saw there with what you do and what was happening in that program is that when the firefighters would start doing some art, their minds would go to this place and they would start sharing some of the things that they were dealing with, some of the stresses. And it wasn't always just the job. Sometimes it was a marriage. Sometimes it was the kids. Sometimes it was financial. But they would just start sharing those things. And I noticed, I had an office there at WellFit with you guys. And I noticed that when people were in their workouts, the same sort of dynamic happened. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, and I do. I remember, having those paintings up on the wall, Buck. What it feels like it wasn't too long ago. And honestly, my background is I kind of did that strategically, but it's kind of to help showcase how far we've come and our continue to push in terms of our joint operation with police and making the facility and our wellness fitness, well-fit gym, the best that it can be, and also provide the best potential for anybody that needs it. And so. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different outlets. I've talked to people about painting. I've talked about, we have a pretty good, what do we call it? It's a yoga program, but it's like resiliency through yoga. We have, different entities and concepts that we try to help, whether we're just breaking down a workout on the board for the day, like, hey, here's the warm up, here's what we're doing for the work. And then we try to put it into the context or kind of the template of something that's fireground related and or sport related and or something more personal life related to kind of get them to check out a little bit, not have to focus on the job per se. I also use a lot of analogies as a coach to the athlete when they walk in the door, like our wellness gym, well fit gym, or even the firehouse. When you walk in and work out with me, leave all that stuff at the door. Whatever it is, personal, work related. It's easier said than done. I get it, but that's the first ask. The second ask is sit down, get on a foam roller or some soft tissue device to help kind of roll out, warm up, and all of a sudden you start to kind of take yourself into the mindset of I'm about to work out. I use a car analogy. So it's like idling the engine, right? Whether, nowadays everyone's got a fob or you can do it on your app, but basically let the engine idle a little bit when it's cold out. Let that thing start to warm up a little bit. That way, when you get in it, it's ready to roll. And then when you start rolling and you start driving, you're in the neighborhood still. So you're still kind of going, slow in a sense, but you're moving and you start to get ready to get on that highway and get to your destination, in which when you merge onto that highway, you better hope that that car is ready to perform because you're going to push it. It's the same thing. You foam roll, you warm up, the idle the engine, driving through the neighborhood, and then boom, by the time you're getting ready for that workout, it's like merging onto the highway and your focus is, your intent is I'm going to improve myself, work on the gains for myself, but also my crew right here in the gym. And it's really cool to kind of put people's mindsets into it because especially firefighters, we love our rigs, our engines, our trucks, our personal cars, and cleaning it. It's a sense of pride to everything else. And if you kind of tap into it in a different realm, you got them. Even if they don't love that you're squatting them today, they're still going to think about, oh yeah, I do love my truck. Okay, maybe I'll start to listen to them about my body. My arms and my legs are kind of like the axles and the tires. All right, cool. And we've won. We've won a little bit of a battle. I'll take it all day.
Yep. I love a good analogy, and I'm going to dovetail into your analogy. So when I was in behavioral health, I heard from headquarters a lot from the older chiefs of, people need to just leave their personal problems and their trauma at the door when they come to work. And my analogy to counter that was that's like telling people that when it's storming outside and any wet footprints inside the firehouse. It's just not possible. That stuff
Right.
comes with them. But I think programs like what you run help to deal with those wet footprints when they come into the workplace, right? It helps
Sure.
to um, for them to find ways to manage that stress in a healthy way, in a way of growth, right? And
Right.
with growth comes pain and
Yeah.
discomfort. You don't have growth unless the pain and discomfort come along with it. And so I think this is a good place to talk a little bit about the functional movement assessment that you guys developed and how that kind of comes into this and helping people customize what their needs are. And I'll give you another story that I remember. I remember when we worked together that you guys were watching the way that firefighters would step off of fire engines
Mm.
because we were having a lot of knee injuries. And so you started a program all around how to actually step off a fire engine. So talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I got to give that credit to Captain Kentucky. He's no longer in our shop, but he definitely was the one that had a great idea. And that it was as simple as, it's doing or instructionally, but also like jokingly having a good time with it. So you can tap into the mindset of a firefighter who might hear, oh, getting off the rig. I know how to get off the rig. I'm not going to watch this video. But like they made it fun and they made it interactive in a sense. And it was like, hey, 3 points of contact when you get off the engine, right? Like just being aware of, oh, by the way, knees, backs, and shoulders, they're always going to be, pretty much our major issues every year, injury wise, and or just, hurt. Everyone's always dealing with some type of wear and tear in those areas. So it was a great idea. Like, hey, let's just have fun with this video and talk about getting off and stepping off the proper way, and actually how dangerous it can be if you're not paying attention, and especially if you're in full gear and you're trying to answer a call and run to that fire. And there's a curb that you don't see from when you step off. And it was really cool to utilize that, from turning around, grabbing the handle and stepping down and then controlling yourself out, instead of some of our, especially our younger bucks, jumping right off of it, full gear and everything. It's like, great, that might be good for you for maybe the first year or two. And then as you get older, your knees get older and your back get older. And we're trying to help mitigate the risk of these issues. And we took it and formulated, the functional movement workshop, and utilizing some of our functional movement screening knowledge, the FMS, actual protocol that's out there, and not having as much time or, bandwidth, but also we don't have that much interaction with the same firefighters day in and day out, so to be able to track and trend certain things is very challenging at times. So we kind of looked at it like, what's the best kind of, shotgun approach to capturing some visuals of the firefighters, some data on them, and then be able to also get hands-on them, adjusting them, talking about some impingements we're seeing or what have you within that, 10 to 15 minute time frame. And then following up with them, hey, again, if you need a program, we got you. If you need to talk to maybe some rehab specialists, we got you on that too. So we came up with, and this was Shep in Captain Kentucky. I can't take credit for this, but I helped to, push it through. But Shep in Captain Kentucky came up with, basically, you did 3 different movements. You did a deadlift on a barbell with super light weight on 3 times. And the coach would sit there and write what they saw. No cues, no coaching. I mean, as long as it was safe, obviously. We weren't going to let anybody jeopardize their low back, but operate on the bar, 3 reps, then you walk forward. You grab dumbbells. They were 15-pound dumbbells, I believe. You press it up and overhead 3 times, put those down, then walk forward, and you got on basically kind of a plank. And you did an inline lunge with, a PVC or dowel behind your back, doing a thoracic mobility measurement. And then we put them through a circuit, real quick body weight squats, push-ups, jumping jacks, just enough to get the heart rate up, and then put the SCBA on their back and had them go through those 3 movements again. And we helped to showcase through our analysis of visualizations and coaching them. We showed them what they look like based off what we saw in the first block, no load on their back and not having that circuit underneath their belt, so their heart rate wasn't elevated, to what it looked like when they had the pack on their back and their heart rates were up, and just talked about the differences and where we see maybe, susceptibility for injuries and whatnot. So we took that and, we still utilize it today to some degree, but I say that because we bounce back and forth between mobility assessments and screenings to our fitness screening and assessment, to some air management, air consumption drills as well. So we try to get as much of a snapshot and a finger on the pulse of our department as to what's going on with their fitness, as well as their mobility and just their overall health to the best of our ability. And then we analyze it. We throw in to our Power BI tracker and kind of see, hey, Buck, the last 4 years, you showed this kind of a trend with your push-ups or, your thoracic mobility assessment. And now something's kind of a little off. Your push-ups went down a little bit and your measurements are a little off. You doing good? Like, how's your shoulders? What's going on with that right one or that left one? And it gives us more of an in terms of a conversation that we know we're not necessarily going to get from them if they just step off the rig, walk in and be like, all right, here, I'm here to work out. It's like, okay, well, what's going on? They're like, no, nothing. I'm good. I'm here to work out. It's like, okay, well, now we get to say, hey, I know something's kind of going on. Just talk to me a little bit. And we utilize those functions in a very fluid and functional way. It just stinks because, again, money, bandwidth, and staffing, there's always kind of a balance in an ecosystem that we have to kind of, work within, but we try to operate through all of those functions as best as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Money and budget are always getting in the way of programs like yours and the programs that I was involved with, because, the money has to go to running the calls first. And then, all the support functions always end up at the end of the list.
If I may, though, I do want to say I agree with you, and it's so cool, and I'm very humbled and proud to say this, because it's not me, it's just the joint effort of really our leadership over the last 2 to 3 years, let alone our current leadership. But there has been more of a push than ever to make sure that we are sharing as much, of a budget, since we don't have one, but from grants to, end of year money or ops putting forth some money to help us out or whatever, these programs and really the culture, as you know, and as we all know, I'm not going to say just firefighters and police, but humans in general, they hate change and they hate the way things are, right? So
Yep.
the fact that culture is actually changing for the better in terms of fitness, behavioral health, and even the dietary stuff, it's been really cool to see that change and evolve over the last few years, specifically the last 2 to 3 years, and now having police involved with us as well. It seems like it's trending very fast upward. So it's fun.
How do you see you mentioned diet? How do you see that fitting into your program, and how important is that?
It's very important, obviously. I think honestly, if there were the three dominoes that we stacked upright next to each other between nutrition, fitness, and behavioral health, and what actually I'll put it as wellness, three dominoes of wellness, right? And what that could mean could be definitely different for each department, but you knock over one, the other three fall, right? I would actually put the first one at nutrition, and mostly because it's just the way our society is built upon, um, basically allowing people to be sick and stay sick, right? And just the way that like food is too readily accessible and it's not necessarily good food. And so let alone you add in a 24-hour shift. You add firefighters that maybe are on a bit of a budget. You know, we all know you don't have X amount of money in the pot. And you're trying to cook for anywhere from 6 to 12 people, or hey, the Chiefs are all coming by. You might be up to 20 people at some point. So we know that how that operates in the firehouse level. And so I think dietary stuff, especially having a dietitian, like we are very blessed and fortunate to have a full-time dietitian on staff, has been a game changer for us. From doing smoothie demos to wrap demos, how to eat healthier. And as Captain Kentucky always said, you know, make better bad decisions on the job, especially. Hey, you're going to go to Chick-fil-A or you're going to go to Chipotle just because it's easy, it's simple, it's going to taste good. It's not quite, you know, slugging down a bunch of sodas and cookies and ice cream. So, hey, get the grilled chicken sandwich and maybe you still get the French fries, but you don't get the dipping sauces, you know, or hey, you don't get a milkshake with it. You get a water or maybe just a watered down lemonade instead of the Coke. You know, it's finding alternative ways to still allow yourself to enjoy life, enjoy food, eat with your crew, but have a little bit more of a healthier option to it. And our dietitian does a great job of that and getting those fact sheets out and visiting stations. And really, we've been pushing hard lately, just to, you know, biased and involved with being a Fairfax County firefighter, but we've been pushing really hard to get into the academy level every single day of the week. So we are training them every single day, 5 days a week for the 6 months, as well as getting Megan, our dietitian, and Nate, our physical therapist, involved with our coaching so they can even sneak in 5 to 10 minutes of a debrief with them. Hey, I see that we sweated a lot today. You need electrolytes, not just water. Or, hey, you need a little more extra calories in it. Or, hey, you know, the rehab specialist is talking about some shoulder prehab stuff or maybe even rehab stuff as you're getting ready for suppression. So it's really cool to kind of interact with our specialists and our SMEs and primarily our dietitian. Because again, diet affects sleep, diet affects fitness, diet affects performance. You can't necessarily say that that's the same relationship amongst the others involved, right? I mean, sleep obviously is going to affect performance, but we all know you make do. You can find ways, and you're going to slug a Coke if you have to just give you some type of energy to get to that call. It's not the best thing in the world. You're not really getting energy, but you'll make do with it. If you can really fix that diet, all those things will improve.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Doesn't mean that I always follow that advice, but I completely
I'm
agree.
not perfect either, believe me.
Right. You also mentioned yoga. How does the movements of yoga fit into the whole functional movement and strength and conditioning?
I'll be honest, it's kind of going back to what we talked about previously too. I would say it's like a 1A, 1B. I think 1A is predominantly changing and shifting the culture in the way fire and even police, especially, like we're having a lot of our special operations divisions people, like our SWAT team, our K9. It's basically mandatory for a lot of those teams to do it. And our firehouses, our captains, our lieutenants, they're basically forcing their crew to sign up on call to have the yoga instructor come out to them, which is super cool to see that. But so I would say it's the moves are important, the breathing techniques, everything about yoga is important. I think the other aspect though is just the fact that they have another outlet. They have something that's not just, you know, going for a run or kicking the heavy bag or, you know, whatever it is that they love about fitness. And yeah, yoga is fitness in nature, but a lot of it is just kind of learning how to decompress and learning how to breathe and taking yourself out of a certain moment or putting yourself into a certain, you know, moment, if not a phase of what our instructors wish you to have. And we have two great instructors, and they're both super unique and different, but very similar. They're both former athletes. They're both instructors that have been around fire and police before. One of them has been around the military before. So they get it, they get the lifestyles, and then you get to add in, hey, it's not just sit here and harness your chi and, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but when you're talking to fire and police, like you got to be careful how and when you utilize those phrases and going up and putting hands on someone that, hey, like this is the best that their downward dog is going to be. So we'll take that, and then build off that. And it's really cool to see the evolution and the progressions that our two instructors have had with our personnel and just how important it's become. And again, seeing that cultural shift, whereas a couple of years ago, maybe even soon as 2 or 3 years ago, you walk into the firehouse with a yoga instructor, you're gonna be like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Now it's like, well, tell me a little bit more about it. Like, I kind of want to know, will it help me with my mobility or my stretching, or how about my breathing, especially the breathing with firefighters, getting on air. And, you talk about tactical breaths or decompressing or what have you. It's definitely a vital, important piece.
Yeah. Well, I will confess that when I left behavioral health and I was back in the fire station, I was one of those captains that had the yoga come in, and I think the flexibility and the balance aspects of that, I think they were invaluable, as well as the breathing. I think that's a really important part of the yoga.
No doubt.
Is, you can train your muscles, but you also need to train your breathing. And what I found interesting when we started to have the yoga instructor come into the station was that some of the movements that you were having us do in the morning workouts were very similar or the same as some of the yoga movements. Some of the stretching exercises that we were doing before the workout were actually coming directly from yoga, to give some of that flexibility and, again, balance.
Yeah, I think if I can, I'll add a little bit to it. I think one of the coolest things about where the strength conditioning field has come, and again, this is coming from my observation as an athlete who would go through pregame warmups to off-season training, in-season training. We did a good amount of rotational things or the transverse plane, tapping into that plane, but it was a lot more of just the north to south stuff, with a lot of lateral stuff involved, not a lot of twisting stuff. And when you look at yoga, I mean, it's predominantly you're rotating, you're moving in different ways, from left to right, right to left, up, down, northwest, all those things. And to be able to have them see that, not just hear it from me and see it from our visualizations of our programming, but from yoga and other entities, like it's been fascinating. It's like how many people have dropped a pen or a marker on the ground and went to go pick it up and blow their back out. It's like, oh my God, I'm cramping or I'm spazzing out, right? Over a simple little movement like that. And what's like, hey, maybe it's because you didn't have the right things turned on in this area, or hey, you just weren't aware of what you were dealing with. And here's how we can help with that. And yoga has definitely been an eye opener for a lot of people in that regard.
Yeah. And to be more intentional about what muscle groups you're activating
in
movements, right?
Yeah, no doubt. CNS, PNS, you got to have that connection.
Yeah. So you also mentioned physical therapists that you have on staff. So how do you interact with them, and what's that look like?
It's one of my mentors in college always said it. He goes, I jokingly say this, but I'm also serious. Even though he's not my boss, your head athletic trainer is basically the guy I go to when I need decisions to be made and or how I'm going to handle a certain athlete when we're dealing with injuries and or just someone that could be potentially susceptible to an injury. So I've always kind of used that framework as, Nathan Pierce, Dr. Pierce came to us from FX Physical Therapy, and he's honestly, he's been a godsend. Like he is so knowledgeable, can sit down in the room, talk to doctors about anything, and at the same time sit down with strength coaches and have a good meathead session. He trains himself. He also just loves this thing that we do, let alone interacting with fire and police. And so to have someone like that on staff, or just someone even remotely close to that caliber, has been awesome, because now I get to go to him, bounce ideas off of him, like, hey, knees, backs, and shoulders. Once again, we know these are the issues, but maybe this year, i.e. this 2024, we've seen an uptick a lot in shoulders, and even biceps. We've had a good amount of bicep tears, and the majority of them are coming from ladder throws. And a majority of those people are also 15 plus years on the job. So it's kind of, common sense to say, hey, it's that 10 to 15 year mark of being on the job. They could be a captain, they could be a technician. It doesn't necessarily mean the rank is a game changer, but the years on changes the wear and tear factor on those shoulders. what are your thoughts on incorporating more crossover symmetry stuff where we're activating more things in the morning time during lineup, scap retraction, thoracic awareness, and it's really just warm-ups. It's not even necessarily work. We're not going to have you doing a bunch of rows and presses necessarily. It's, hey, let's just kind of lubricate the joints right after you do morning lineup before you start to wash the rigs or do some gear check or whatever your culture is. But to have him kind of come back and be like, you know what, I love that idea. Or how about let's take it a step further. Or, hey, I'm seeing a lot more knees now start to come across my desk. Maybe we still need to start looking at some hamstring glute activation or, whatever it is. So it's really cool to have kind of a doctor strength coach for me personally to be able to bounce my ideas off of, but also for our people to have that kind of skill set available to them.
Yeah. So as when we worked together, you worked a lot with firefighters that were recovering from injuries, and I'm certain that continues. What have been some of the challenges you've had to deal with when, somebody comes into your shop with an injury or has to recover from injury? They're under the clock because they have a certain amount of time they have to recover. What kind of emotional and psychological things are you seeing with them as they're recovering?
Yeah, so this is a tricky one, right? As you know, I don't know, I'll kind of add my little 2 cents in with like Sebastian Younger. So being that I got a degree in sociology, I'm very much into sociology as kind of a science and just learning what I can from learning about people. Well, not necessarily the psychology, but also, the decisions that they make, but the why behind it. And so like I said in the beginning, when you talk to someone and have them open up even just a little bit about what it is that they love to do or like to do, or maybe some of the roadblocks they've been running into recently, it opens up a gateway in terms of, all right, our relationship just became a little bit more connected. And now I can also work in, another aspect outside of just recovering from an injury, or maybe even just getting back to the job that's going to help with both those things. And it's amazing. Sebastian Younger talks about in a lot of his books with the military, but PTSD, and a lot of what people are dealing with and soldiers coming back from the theater of combat, it's not necessarily what they saw over there or what it was that they experienced. There is that, but a lot of it was the worth. They're coming back to the United States. They're no longer in their unit. They're no longer the gunner. They're no longer the medic, and they feel kind of worthless. They feel lost. And then you add in everything that they dealt with and they saw. And a lot of it is the same with our people, and especially with injuries. You see them come in, and honestly, you can even classify pregnancies with that. I've seen it a couple of times with some of our female firefighters that are dealing with postpartum stuff, and not even, postpartum depression necessarily, like the classification of that, but also, hey, I know I'm a little more beat up. I'm aware of I was a little more depressed initially post birth, but I'm also worried about getting back to the field and performing my job outside of those things. And here's why, I can't pick up a ladder anymore. I got to relearn how to do it, And so like, it doesn't matter if it's an ACL, it doesn't matter if it's postpartum, if it's a concussion, or even a soldier coming back from being deployed back to the fire department. They're kind of all the same in the sense that you got to figure out what makes them tick, find that worth, that element to them, and then utilize it with fitness and how it's going to help them, and constantly kind of harp on them and have my peer fitness trainers who also help us in a lot of this. Again, having that peer-to-peer interaction, engage them in those things. It's not just, hey, we got to squat today, rep 1, rep 2. It's, hey, you're going to squat today, but remember why we're doing that. It's to build up those leg muscles again so you can do what? Yeah, climb in and out of that rig or what have you, protect your back. So it's really cool and fun to find new ways to add in the verbiage and just kind of translate almost to help these people that are dealing with a lot of, the depression and the funk that they get into from being hurt.
Yeah. So as we're coming to a close, we're creeping up on an hour, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about, for all those athletes and firefighters, police officers, both locally, federally, who are dealing with small departments or large departments, what advice could you give them on how to build a program that is effective and sustainable and is valuable to their people? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I mean, I have a lot. I feel like I would love to talk further on that, later date, but you start basic, right? I think especially there's probably two sides to this answer, in the sense that, is it a probie or a technician that maybe doesn't have a whole lot of influence within the crew, or even, within their personal life in terms of getting a fitness program going, and or is it a captain or battalion chief trying to get their crew more motivated to work out? But either way that you look at it, it's stay simple. Keep it simple. Stupid has always been something I've lived off of in terms of designing a program. And I'll literally sit there, I'll write KISS at the top of my sheet and be like, all right, remember, start simple. It's so much easier to add on than it is to kind of subtract, especially when it comes to like technical movements or maybe just learning something for the first time. So in terms of fitness, the way we always, progress our periodization or our program design is, you do a needs analysis. So again, if I'm a captain and I'm looking at my crew, I'm going to take everything into consideration: age, years on the job, male, female. What are we dealing with here? What is my goal for them? Obviously, it's job performance, but maybe it's, I know we got a lot of backs, a lot of shoulders, a lot of knee issues. Maybe it's a fitness assessment that's coming up that we need to get better at, push-ups and step-ups or what have you. And then I'm going to always start with a warm-up. Again, foam roll, some type of a dynamic warm-up is something as simple that is 5 to 10 minutes long that can get the heart rate up. You could do a bunch of jumping jacks, some old school stuff, but enough to get them primed, right? Motion is lotion. So get everything primed, get them focused on the workout. And then you could build in simple stuff like push-ups and squats. You then build off that. Maybe we grab some dumbbells and we talk about some bench presses. But the idea is you do something that's low intensity to begin with. And that way it's not too demanding to start with. And you work on the more volume-based stuff. So again, you build that level of endurance up, you build the level of confidence up so that when things do get hard, you're going to be comfortable with that uncomfortable, right? Which is no different than job training, get in gear for the first time. And that's another kind of analogy that I use is think back to the academy. When you first started, were you throwing on PPE and the SCBA and get on air right off the bat? And no, you weren't, right? So you were figuring out the ins and outs of how those things worked. How did you turn your cylinder on? How do you put the pack on? And then you progressively got those things on you and you moved and operated on them, with them on, excuse me. And then you got on air. And then by the end of it, you were squared away. Your gear was a little dirtier. You were a little saltier in a sense. You were ready to roll because you progressed your way through it all. It's no different than fitness. Figure out what things you're good at, exploit those strengths, and then try to add in on the things that you're maybe weak at, or maybe will make those strengths a little bit harder to achieve in a sense and make them more challenging. So you could talk about different sets and reps and different exercises, but it's always start simple, build upon it each day of the tour or your off days or whenever you decide you want to do it. And also reach out for help, ask questions. We sat in on the WFI task force for the IFF this past week to kind of talk about how can we improve the wellness fitness initiative for all of the fire service in North America. And the common theme that we all came to an agreement on was staying in touch with each other, reaching out to other departments, other fire stations, other captains, other leadership, asking what they're doing, steal ideas from them, pick their brains. We did that in the sports strength world as well. Every off season at JMU, we'd go visit William and Mary or, University of Maryland or Georgetown and just pick those coaches' brains. We got to network, but at the same time, hey, what are you doing? Maybe it's different than what we're doing. Maybe it's the same. That's probably also a very important piece that people kind of forget about is it's okay to share and steal ideas from each other.
Yeah. I think, to dovetail into that, I think one of the benefits, to do a little marketing here for ourselves, one of the benefits of participating in the World Police Fire Games and the U.S. Police and Fire Championships and the First Responder Relay is that opportunity to network, that opportunity to have camaraderie, particularly coming out of the pandemic years where we were so isolated and there was so much, particularly in the fire service, it seemed like so much stress on us about keeping people safe and all the social distancing. You have an opportunity to come and not just compete for a medal, but to share your training plans, share with other people what's working for you. I see so much of that, and my role in the organization is I'm the director of photography, so I'm out and I see a lot of the athletes, and I'm watching them very closely as I photograph them, and how they interact with one another, and I think there's a lot of benefit to being with like-minded people that want to stay physically fit, that want to take care of their bodies. But I think it's also important for those same people to be mentors to some of the younger people coming into the services, that this is not just about winners and losers. And really the organization is not about winners and losers. It's about the joy of actually competing and testing yourself,
Sure.
you know. And so I just want to thank you again for taking your time to talk about your program. I think it's a great program. I always have. I I think you mentioned the female firefighters coming back from pregnancy. I remember years and years ago, there was a female firefighter that was coming back from a pregnancy and knew that she was not physically capable to do the job, and came to you guys and said, "Hey, can you build a program for me to get back to work?" And that started off as a morning workout for just some women who were
Yep.
coming back from pregnancy, and it built on itself, and then it became a department-wide morning workout. And I can only assume that it continues today, which I think is a great thing. So thanks for everything you do, and thanks for your time. And any final words?
Yeah, no, again, once again, I can't thank you enough for having me on. And yeah, honestly, I was going to kind of conclude with that, and I'm glad you brought it up. But that is the background that I have on. It's in a testament to that very that very program start. It was those women coming to us, and we still have those workout groups going on, and all the men then coming up to us and say, "Hey, what are those women doing? They're all working out in a group. Can we jump in?" And we now have a 6 o'clock through 10 o'clock. We have 4 different groups that operate, including a mandatory light duty group, to make sure that if you've been cleared and you are through the green lit process, you come out and you work out with us and just not your injured body part. And so it's so cool how just I don't want to say it was a little thing, but just a little concept of having a female only group to get their strength up has evolved basically into everything that you see behind me and more. You know, that's all it takes is one little pebble or stone dropped in that pond, and that ripple effect can be awesome.
Yeah, and it was a seed, right? There was a seed that was planted.
Yep.
And I remember, when I had my office there, I worked out with you guys every morning.
Yeah.
And what was really nice about it is how you had some retirees that were there,
Yeah.
and all different kinds of capability levels, but they helped one another. If somebody didn't quite know the movement, they would help the other person with the
Yeah.
movements. It just all of the teamwork that took place there. It was a beautiful thing, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. The last thing I'll say too, real quick, is everyone still talks about Fairfax County's World Police and Fire Games. So I know the one in Birmingham it's got a lot of people fired up to have it back on U.S. soil, but also just to be able to get there. So I know some people have already asked about training for certain events, and I know that I'm looking forward to seeing it all shake out. So it's gonna be exciting.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, we'll be scheduling another webinar sometime in January. So please be on the lookout, and check out our website, www.cpaf.org, where this video will be available. Thank you.
Thank you, Buck.